Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some laws of the universe. Today we're going to be talking about the 8 fundamental laws of the universe. This is the laws of creation. This is deeper knowledge. This is a level of responsibility. If you've been following my stuff, you know what that means. Once you know this, you're responsible for it. So, let's dig in and start talking about the laws of the universe. First up, the law of the one. All mass is energy stored and neither be created or destroyed. This is a summary of Newton's laws of physics, the basic laws of motion. Nothing can be created outside of what already exists. That includes bringing things into your life. That includes the things that we're going to talk about in manifestation. You cannot just summarily bring something out of nothing. It has to come from a base. It has to be pulled from somewheres. Nothing can be created outside of what already exists. And everything is the one. All things are equal. They are exactly the same and only held together in differences by the harmonics on which they operate. You are held by harmonics. The screen that you're watching me on is held by a different harmonic, but we're comprised of the same elements. There are carbon, silicon, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. Like all of the fundamentals of life are existent in everything, everywhere. But the transmutation is possible, but you cannot create nor destroy. Law 2, the law of momentum. An object will remain constant unless acted upon with sufficient force. This is another one of the Newtonian laws of physics. This is a fundamental law of life. If you do not expend energy, there will be no change. If you do not invest time, effort, or willpower, there can be no change in circumstance. If you are content to exist as you exist and do not choose actively to change the situation, then you will remain in the exact same situation that you were in. An object will remain constant unless it is acted upon with sufficient force. Sufficient force is the least amount of force necessary to change an object. The reason that is so important is because of the law of returns, which we will get to. And the sufficient force, you want to tailor your force to the maximum amount of return of momentum. That which you put out will be returned. We'll get to more of that later. But once an object is in motion and once the effort or will or energy is expended, then it takes an outside force to stop it. This is a basic law of physics. You should have learned this in grade school. I reworded it a little bit because it fits better this way. Newton really tried to break into smaller pieces something which was a larger piece. The third law is the law of response. For every action creates a proportional response, not necessarily an equal and opposite one. Newton was a little bit wrong with that. He was a little bit wrong with the theorem of gravity. Gravity, he didn't explain gravity exactly the way that we understand it now. And the way that we understand it now is not exactly correct either. We've talked about that in other videos. We will talk about that in more videos, but today's not really the video for that. But everything you do does create a proportional response. Now, the proportional response comes from another law. This law deals only with the fact that doing it creates it. That which you expend creates a proportional response. The law of returns. This is the other side of the law of proportional responses. Effort expended returns at a higher rate until peak is achieved. This is the squared cube law. For every growth in size, you grow in surface by a factor of 2, but you grow in volume by a factor of 3. That is the law of returns of thirds. This is a fundamental law of physics and a fundamental law of spirituality. The effort expended has a peak that is due to another law. But because you expend the effort, there will be a return. Whether or not that return is what you intended. Then we're going to go to 5. This is the law of attraction. This is not necessarily what people think of when they think of the current understanding of the law of attraction. Yes, you do attract things to you, but it is because functions of a similar type tend to cluster. You can see this in practical application by looking at marketplaces, right? If you have a vast bazaar, right? Think really big, not like a mall, but like 5 or 6 malls together. You will have tendencies of cluster in those areas. A mall is more of a structured, let's intentionally keep things separated type of deal, but if left to its own devices, you will have an electronics store cluster. You will have an outdoor store cluster. You will have a bookstore cluster. Whatever the type of store is will tend to cluster. Now, the practical way of looking at that is because if there's a customer that can't find what they want in this one, then they can walk out of that store and into another one and possibly find what they want. But the fundamentals of it is the law of attraction. This also applies if you look at bar situations. Like if you're out and you're in the club, and I'm using that because most people will be familiar with that, you will see cliques, or high school or elementary school or whatever school, you tend to see cliques. People who have similar types tend to cluster together. You'll see sports people, you'll see outdoors people, you'll see bookworms, you'll see whatever cluster the functions of a similar type tend to cluster. This is not necessarily talking about cognitive functions. This is talking about functions in practical application. This is talking about actual things tend to cluster towards things that are the same. This is like attracts like. This is basic magnetism to a degree. And functions of a similar type tend to cluster. The law of genders. Oh boy, we just set something off because guess what? There are only 2. And somebody may get mad at me for that, but you can get mad all you want. It does not change the fundamental law of the universe. And the law of genders states that everything in the universe contains both male and female. You, whatever sex you happen to be, contain both creation and destruction energy. You create both assimilation and expulsion energy. That is masculine and feminine. The male tends to be the more destructive of the energies. It tends to be the harvesters. It tends to be the hunters and the enders of things. And women tend to be, or female energy tends to be, the creation source. It's one end of the toroid versus the other end of the toroid. It is positive and negative. It is up and down. Those are all the basic function of the law of genders. Everything in the universe contains both. That is why you're held together. That is why everything is held together. It's because it holds both creation and destruction within it. Now, the degree to which you use the forces that are within you is completely individual, but you have access to both. And both, balanced, are necessary for a fully functioning cognitive stack, oral stack. Like everything in order to be healthy requires you. Like if you want to be healthy, it requires you to be balanced in your masculine and feminine energies. Number 7 is the law of rhythm. Every force is toroidal. As the pendulum swings, so it must return. We've talked before about the toroid and how it is a magnetic force. It is an emanation that makes what looks like a donut. It goes like this, right?
and it's all the way around, and it's going in this direction at the same time it's going in this direction, and everything, it makes a sphere. But that sphere is really a toroid. It has a center, it has an emanation point and a return point. That is the masculine and feminine energies and the law of rhythm. This plays into as well, where were we at with right here? The higher rate until the peak, right? Well, the peak is the top of the toroid. It is the highest point of the waveform. It is the very top. It is the beginning of the law of diminishing returns. The peak is the maximum amount of effort for the greatest gain. And then everything on the other side of that is expended energy past the point of gained returns. So once you get to a certain point of expended energy, it must, by the law of rhythm, return to the point of no energy return. That doesn't mean that it means that it is harder to push something the farther away from you it is. It is leverage. It is the basic force by which things move. As the pendulum swings, so it must return. For everything that happens that goes this way, it must come back this way, because a pendulum is making part of a toroid. It has a beginning point and two ending points, but that is not necessarily ends, because there is no beginning and there is no end. There is only the cyclical nature of life and energy. It cannot be created or destroyed, right? And then finally, we're going to get to the law of purpose. Everything has a purpose. Even misalignment can be part of a purpose. The greater scope of this we've talked about before, and I'm going to hit briefly here. The greater scope of this is you. You have a purpose for being here. Your purpose for being here is something that you agreed to before you came here. Now, you have several options throughout your life, and by several I mean a multitude of options that you could take in fulfilling your purpose. And you also have multiple purposes. You, prior to being here, were energy somewhere else. The energy that propels your meat suit was somewhere else. And while it was somewhere else, you as a consciousness decided that you would undergo certain trials and certain problems throughout your life. You would receive certain blessings, whether or not you put out the energy. You would receive certain trials, whether or not you put out the energy. But if you make decisions that align towards a greater purpose, then your greater purpose will fulfill you, and your completion in the cycle will be complete. Now, that is an extremely difficult thing to do. And the fact that you have multiple purposes makes it that much harder. Some people have a purpose to raise people up. We'll use that. And your purpose in life is to raise people up, whether you're a coach, you're a teacher, you're a doctor, or whatever you happen to be. Your particular purpose is to raise people up. But at the same time, as everything has a rhythm, you can also choose the opposite purpose. You can choose, because of freedom of will, you can choose the purpose to be the opposite. You can choose to push people down. You can choose to use your knowledge for the greater detriment as opposed to the greater good. You may not even consciously be doing that, but whether or not you are consciously doing that, you are serving one of the two purposes. Now, again, you can have several purposes. Your purpose can be to raise people up, and it can be to be materially wealthy. That can be one of the purposes that you are here to understand. It could be the opposite. You could be to raise people up and to live a life of poverty. That could be your purpose. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be, and that your circumstances now are what they are, and that's all there is to it. You know whether or not material goods are important to you. You know that. Even if they're not, you can chase them. And if you're not aligned to being materially wealthy as a greater purpose in your life, then you will chase the wrong things, right? You will be chasing the material wealth when you're really supposed to be chasing the humbleness that comes from not being materially wealthy. And if you live your purpose as intended, then the energy is not expended past the point of no returns. Now, the practical application of these things is a little bit in line with what we have been talking about with the stack cognitively. The recognition of the laws is a step in controlling your part in the laws. If you realize that all the things are one thing, and that things that are not moving can't move unless you decide to make them move, and you know that if you decide to make them move, there will be a response in proportion to the effort expended. You will receive, according to the squared cube law, right? That the law of threes. Now, this is where you need to really pay attention here, because this law, the squared cube law, really can get you in a bind. Your greater purpose and your lesser purpose can be served by your actions regardless of what you're currently deciding. You can at any point in time decide to change things, but the effort that you expend will be returned to you. And it will be returned to you until peak at the squared cube, at which point it will be removed from you at the squared cube. Now, negative energy expended will return to you by the cubed law. It will return to you at least times 3. That can be exponential as it is expended to the peak. But if you are giving out bad energy, it will come back to you. If you are talking about people all the time, then people will talk about you all the time, and they will be more hurtful than you are. If you are being violent to people all the time, then the violence will be returned to you, probably to your great detriment, with the possible loss of life or limb. But if you are expending the positive energy, it also will be returned to you. Napoleon Hill has a really good way of putting it, and it is the enthusiasm and the going the extra mile, is how he likes to put it. If you are going the extra mile, then that energy has to be returned to you. And it has to be returned to you according to the squared cube law. So if you are putting out positive energy and good vibes, if you are praying for someone else's economic benefit, chances are yours is going to get better. You should not do it because of that, because the law of returns takes in your intentions. This right here takes your soul's journey into account. So when you are getting your returns, it is based off of your intentions. The measure by which you use is the measure by which you will be judged. The cup that you use is the cup that will be used. These are this. This is a consciousness decision. The law of attraction. If you are staying in a negative state, you will attract negative. Period. Now, the universe, the God, the energy, the source, whatever you happen to want to call it, will attempt to intercede on either side. That is part of the law of response and the law of rhythm. But if you are positive and you are constantly being positive and taking positive action in your life to change things, something will come along to stumble you. That is a test to see your response, to check your intentionality, to see if you have sufficient momentum, to see if you are following the laws. And if you are, and you make it through your stumbling block, the other side of that is the threefold return. But if you're doing negative, the same thing happens. If you are living a life of crime and you are living a life of lawlessness, which some of us may have done at one point in life, you will receive opportunities to change that. And it is up to you to decide to take those. I cannot make you decide to quit selling drugs. I cannot make you decide to quit robbing people or to drinking yourself stupid every day. I can't do that for anyone except for myself because of these laws. If you try to force your will on someone else, you are attracting someone else forcing their will on you. See how this works? See why this is a level of responsibility? The intentionality that can be placed into this will change your life. There is no, if you listen to this, you understand this, and you apply these principles in your life in an active manner, you will receive change. But you have to recognize the challenges when they come as a challenge and not a stopping point. If you're doing good and you want to continue doing good, you cannot succumb to the opposite force affecting you, the law of rhythm affecting you. There will be highs, there will be lows, but you personally must maintain the positive attitude. You personally must continue to make the right choices. Part of that is following the law of genders, to understand that there is creation and destruction in everything. There is light and dark in everything. This technology that is allowing me to communicate to you how to change your life can drag you into a sense of addiction to where all you do every single day is stare at a screen. I've been guilty of that one. All you do every day is look at things that bring you no positive returns in your life. That is the destructive side, the male side of this technology. But it also allows me to help you to create the life that you envision for yourself, because that is also a thing. And if you are envisioning your life, you need to make sure that you are incorporating both sides. You need to recognize what the detriments are of your actions at all times. Every action has a response, and that response is either male or female, masculine or feminine, however you want to put it. I don't really care. It is a law of opposites would probably be a better way of putting it, but gender works. Most people can identify with that. It is creation and destruction. It is beginning and end. It is alpha and omega. It is all things, right? It is the balance that we need to achieve within ourselves is to fully assimilate our feminine side if you're a man, right? Now, some of people are out of balance with that in both directions. You see alpha males, and then you see people who were born one way and think that they can be another. That is a perversion of the law of genders. That is an over assimilation of either side of the opposite poles. And you need to be the middle. Like, if you want to be the positive force that you can be and to affect your life in the way that you probably want to if you're here, then you need to accept that you can be destructive, that your actions can have a detrimental effect to someone, even if they're unintended. Something that you say to someone can be destructive to them. You can tell your child that they're dumb, or they're an idiot, or they'll never amount to anything. You can curse your children in that way. And that is using the masculine energy to do that. Or you can tell them that they're wonderful and that they're going to grow, and that is using the feminine energy. But if you're using either one of those to the extreme, right, there's necessity for correction using masculine energy, and there's a necessity for nurturing we're using the feminine energy. But if you do too much nurturing, you wind up with the mama's boy. And if you do too much of the opposite and you're not nurturing, then you wind up with these serial killers that are out here just destroying people or running a country for what it's worth. That comes back to the law of rhythm. This is the law of the pendulum. This is what goes must return. This is the waveform of life. All life is energy, and all energy is a waveform. Therefore, all things must follow the rhythm of growth and destruction. You are born, you live, you die. That is your peak and your rhythm. You start here, you wind up here, but at some point in time, you wind up way up here. That is your peak, and then you begin the decline. You grow until you get to the point where you are fully formed and fully where you're at, and then you start to decline. Now, that curve may not be a smooth curve. It may be a sharp drop, right? It could be a long up and then sharp down. It could be, but there is a return. You were born and you die. The exact same thing is true for all things. There is a cycle for all things. If you look at modern politics, for instance, and without going into details, that might be controversial. For every action that is taken by one side or the other, there is an action that is taken by the other side. And that causes the pendulum to swing. Now, there can be an argument made without trying to offend anybody, because I'm never trying to offend people, believe it or not. I don't care if I do to a large degree, because I have to give the truth regardless. But believe it or not, that if you have somebody saying, make America great again, and they are investing their energy into making America great again, and they succeed to a large part, and the argument can definitely be made that there was success to a large part leading up to the beginning of a certain outbreak, then on the other side of that rhythm comes people making decisions that do the exact opposite of that restrict energy consumption and production. You may not recognize that that person did that, and if not, then I'm sorry. But there was definite decisions made when the pendulum returned that were opposing the ones made prior. This is one of the starkest, this last two presidential positions is one of the starkest reveals of the pendulum, and that really worries me to a large degree because of this. And by worry, I mean I see things that could possibly come from it, right? From the time that the country was founded until the time of the Civil War, the pendulum swung from freedom to oppression, and then back up to freedom, and then back down. We came through Jim Crow, right? And we came back up to the other side on the backside of Jim Crow. The amount of time between these events appears to be diminishing now. There are other events involved in that timeline, but that is an oversimplification by all means. But it appears that the rhythm, like we're on the backside of the peak, right? And therefore there is less energy being expended, and the returns are smaller. And so the time period between the destructive forces appear to be very small these days. Whereas before it was a large pendulum swing, as the energy is expended in the force against gravity, then the pendulum swings slower. And now we appear to be almost to the point where the pendulum has to be reset. For every swing to the right, there is an equal resistance from the left that makes the swing come back. And the most important thing to take out of all of this is the law of purpose. Napoleon Hill talks about this one too. He talks about having a definite purpose in your life, and that is what you are doing. You are here for a purpose. Your job, should you choose to accept it, right? Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find out what your purpose is. Your specific purpose, what you are supposed to do. Now, I hope that I have helped you by going through the stack, and we're not done with that. We've got a lot more to do with that, but these things need to be done in a certain order, I think. We need to talk about these laws before we start talking about pulling things into your life, because before you start really trying to manifest, you need to know what you are supposed to do. I I emphasize that on purpose, because if you are not following your purpose, like if you are not aligning with your greater purpose, then you are aligning with your lesser, right? And if you're not going up the spiral, then you are going down the spiral. And the only way to go up the spiral is to put in the effort. Now, the effort that you put in will be returned to you according to the laws, and you will draw the things that you need in your life through that. And if you balance your life and you observe the rhythms, then you can achieve your purpose, whatever that may be. Your personal purpose may not be to be the President of the United States. It may be simply, and this is not no means to diminish it, but simply to be a mother or a father. I'm a stay-at-home dad. Like, life gave me that. I didn't really choose that. But that's because I was not applying these things. If I would have paid attention, I wouldn't be injured. My injury is mainly my fault. I decided to I went to work when I should not have. I knew I shouldn't have, but I let my sense of duty draw me into something that I really shouldn't have done. I chose the wrong side of the pendulum there. But if you can find your purpose and you can align with your purpose, then it has no choice but to come true for you. Now, you have to expend the effort, right? You have to expend the effort. If you do not put the effort in, you cannot receive gains. That is not the minimum effort. Now, saying prayers for someone every day or for multiple someones every day is a wonderful thing. But if you're not investing the proper energies into doing that, right? If you're just by rote saying a prayer, there is nothing going to come from that. If you're just saying something that someone gave you to say, now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. There is no power in that prayer, right? None. There is no purpose stated in that prayer. Now, I lay me down to sleep, and I pray for my Lord my soul to keep. There's power in that because it is invested by me. That is me being intentional in the prayer that I put forth. If you are not being intentional in the prayer, there will be no returns. This is why people get so fed up with the law of attraction, as the way that it's presented, the secret and the key and all of the various incarnations that it has had through time. It is because you're not aligning correctly. You're not choosing the right purpose, right? Or you're not investing the right energy. You have to go above and beyond. Again, Napoleon Hill. Yeah. If y'all haven't checked out Napoleon Hill, you should definitely do that. But this is, if you're investing the appropriate energy, is what he calls going the extra mile. It is not just doing only what must be done. In a work situation, you have a job. You know exactly where your responsibilities lie in your job, and you know exactly what is expected from you. But if you can do all of that, that is important too. You must complete all of what is expected of you in your place of employment. All of it. And if you can, on top of that, assist someone else in their thing with no expectation of a return, that is energy invested. And that energy invested will be returned to you, despite the fact that you did it without that intention. So, helping someone in the office to complete their task that they're behind on will bring notice to you from someone else, even if you don't say, hey, I helped this guy. And by all means, if you're doing the helping, right? If you have all of your responsibilities in order and you decide, I'm going to help Bob here because he's swamped, you do not get the right to hold that over their head at all. You have no right to expect them to return that energy to you. You have zero right to expect the energy you invest in one person to be returned by that one person. Generally speaking, the universe does not work that way. God does not work that way. You help Bob. George sees that over here and never mentions the word to you, but he tells Jane. And then Jane returns the energy to you by giving you a raise. That is how that works. But if you help Bob and you walk around the office talking about, yeah, I helped Bob out. Yeah, man, Bob was in a bind and I gave him a hand. Yeah, I'm a good guy. I helped him get his shit together. Then guess what? You're choosing the wrong side of that spiral. You are choosing the negative attraction side of that spiral. And you're going to attract people to you. Some of them may even seem to be beneficial to your life, but they are not. Because if you're taking that action, if you are the guy running around talking about, I help this person, I help that person, I help this person, I help that person, then what you are actually attracting into your life is other people who are doing the exact same thing. Because the law of attraction says that, right, you attract that which you put out. And so if you're putting out helping someone with no expectation of return, you will attract someone who is helping others with no expectation of return. That's real, real, real. That is the point of the going the extra mile that Napoleon Hill talked about. All of these things have been talked about by other people. I've never seen them laid out in these 8 points specifically. But all of these apply to the laws of physics. They apply to the laws of energy conservation. They apply to the laws of everything. All of these laws apply to everything. Everything. So, hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a complicated subject. This lesson right here has the most potential to change your life. I promise you. I am here to help you get better. I am trying earnestly not to. It's impossible to not be aware that if you are helping someone, the energy will be returned. I am not trying to do this specifically for that. I realize that there will be a consequence for what I'm doing, but I am genuinely happy helping people. And so I hope that I can help you to be a little bit better in your life in the way that you want to be. Because I can't change you. I have no right to even try. I can be an example. I can show you what I do. I can tell you what I do. I try not to be the guy talking about I help these people, but I do help people. Right? I help people, random people in the store come up to me and tell me their life story, and we pray. That happens to me all the time. Like all the time. People in the parking lot of the store. People just randomly come up to me. Like I had a guy come up talking about how his wife was cheating on him and he was about to kill himself. Like I've had some crazy stuff come to me. And I don't really talk about that. Like, because I am aware of this and I don't want to attract people like that. Like I like to help people. That's why I help people. I hope, I pray, I wish, and I invest my energy in helping you to be better. That is my entire intention. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Till next time, this has been Pittstake. Peace.